turn, camera. Camera. Camera, please turn. It's not cooperating. What's up with you, eh? Why are you so stiff? Why are you so stiff? Hey. Ooh, it worked. Kivan, sound, hello. I'm going to pull up our subject today. Excellent. Today we are doing Jordan Peterson thing because he is the, can we say, an influencer. Let's see how many people follow Jordan Peterson cumulatively. So across major platforms, has 9 million followers on Instagram, 8.8 million, okay. So book sales, 12 Rules for Life, are sold more than 5 million copies worldwide. And so main social, about 8.8 million. So it's a pretty prominent figure. And podcast downloads, over 150 million total downloads. And I think, I don't know if he's in his prime or maybe, I have a feeling that he was in his, the great on high. He was in kind of his media prime, perhaps up until 2024, but maybe I'm just judging by my exposure to his content, because at some point, I remember, what is that? At some point, there was a ton of Jordan Peterson just everywhere. So I was under the impression that he was incredibly big. I don't know right now if he is as seen in the media or not. But nevertheless, he is a prominent figure. He influenced not only the world of some social discourse, how to live life. Not only he tried to expose certain things related to the modern track of things. He also had a huge influence on the dietary world. And I think he played a major role in the distribution and spread of carnivory. So he has influence across multiple fields of life. He was a big figure online, but he has disappeared. Yeah, I'm curious what happened. Maybe they're cooking him for the new leap of fame. Let's Google. Before we go into his quotes, let's see. Why did Jordan Peterson disappear lately? Okay, so he has been indeed unwell. And that's actually an interesting metric as well, to know. So mid-2025, early 2026. Okay, I hope that he's going to do well. I didn't know about that, but again, in my impression, it felt like he's been out for quite a while now. Hello guys for joining. So let's delve into his quotes. And let's see how the tantric outlook that at its basis has such values as freedom, wholeness, and joy forward, pleasure forward life, balance, overall development of an individual. How functions built of those values, functions built on those foundations, how they compare with the prominent figure. Can we say that Jordan Peterson is a modern day philosopher? I don't know. Maybe a publicist, influential figure whose opinion has been influencing lots of people. How they compare? I'm really curious to think through that. And model for my business. Okay, thank you guys. Troy Wright. Hello, nice to see you back. And we'll just begin. I opened the website goodreads.com, and here are Jordan Peterson quotes. So let's begin with the very first one. I don't think that you have any insight whatsoever into your capacity for good until you have some well-developed insight into your capacity for evil. What I really like about this is that he prefaces it with, I don't think, as opposed to saying it as some categorical statement that this is the truth. I appreciate that. I really respect that when people say that, when they announce the limitation, when they announce the limits of their statement. I don't think that. I don't think that means that a person thinks about it. That means that a person has arguments, means that person is open to arguments, means that it's a flexible thing and person acknowledges that this is a formulated opinion. It's a based opinion, but this is an opinion. So we're not talking about this is the law. Because if we are approaching any discourse from the scientific standpoint means mostly that we are giving the framework, we're giving the boundaries of applicability for our statements. We are defining the model within which our further statement, our further argumentation holds true. So this I appreciate a lot. So I don't think that you have any insight whatsoever into your capacity for good until you have some well-developed insight into your capacity for evil. And what I can say is that I tend to disagree with this statement. I don't think that first of all, know your capacity for good. You need to know your capacity for evil. What is that capacity? Evil and good will be very relative terms. So capacity for destruction and capacity for creation, perhaps, could be on the same axis. But good and evil are not things that are objective in nature. We cannot compute them, we cannot quantify them on the same axis. So when we say that your capacity for good is outweighed is kind of on the same spectrum as your capacity for evil, what is good and what is evil to begin with? These terms themselves are too complex, they are too subjective, because something there's so many triage happening in our daily life of many people, and depending on the amount of responsibility that's on the shoulders of a given individual, they will have more and more choices to make that will be favoring something one and not favoring or harming something else. So capacity for good and capacity for evil are not on the same spectrum. This is why I don't agree with the statement of Jordan Peterson. Terms that are something to think about. Yes, Kiva. We need to agree on terms first, exactly. And we need to agree on how we define things, how we describe, how we understand things. Thank you, Great Tone. How I would reward this statement to make it more real life applicable, perhaps. The statement that I don't think that you have any insight whatsoever into your capacity for good until you have some well-developed insight into your capacity for evil. I would reframe it into the measurement of your responsibility. DCA, whoa, hello. Nice to see you back. I've been missing you so much, and I'm so happy that you joined. Today we are discussing quotes from Jordan Peterson. And we're doing so from, hello, we're doing so from my perspective, tantric perspective perhaps. I would reframe the statement into the amount of responsibility you possess, like foremost. Because, for instance, if you can influence, let's say, one human being and 1 square meter or 1 square yard of land in your life, this is your capacity for good and evil equivalently. If you hold capacity of responsibility to influence 100,000 people, managing, let's say, some significant amount of some natural resource, this is your other scale of responsibility in which you can exercise good and evil. And moreover, those things will be subjective, depending on who becomes the target of your influence of the same exact action. So this is what I understand from this statement. This is how I would reframe it. That you measure things in terms of responsibility. The scale of your choices, the scale of your choices affect the environment. So, quote number 1, we've done it. Peterson is brilliant. People hate him, hate the truth. Fishing starts here. I mean, this sounds a little bit cultish. Today we're doing an interesting job of breaking down his statements and scrutinizing them. So, we are going to actually apply logic that removes the element of idolatry. It's very important to take statements and break them down, because this is where you ultimately find the fine balance. This is where you ultimately find your own truth. This is when you ultimately relax yourself and refocus, recenter yourself on your goals. Because it is sometimes very tempting to grab onto some figure, some ideas, and substitute your own perception, your own thinking, your own responsibility, your own ideas with those things. It is very handy sometimes when the times are rough. It is very appealing to opt for some figure of authority to make you go through a difficult period in life, for instance, to support you through that, to give you that new facet of understanding of something. It may be very helpful. But it is always very good practice to scrutinize things that you are hearing, especially the more dogmatic they are, the more they resemble a rule book, the less flexibility they imply to them. I mean, the whole philosophy of Jordan Peterson relies on a very small set of varied observations. He lacks a huge chunk and type of experiences. All his definitions are based on those observations. Robert, nice to meet you. He was deplatformed by the liberal elites who control Canadian society. I would not confuse liberalism with leftism, okay? This is one big thing that I want to point out in the modern discourse. There are people who equate leftism with liberalism. Those things are incorrect, fundamentally incorrect. And then another thing, by the way, another remark that I want to mention is that what we're reading today, Jordan Peterson, his public persona. I don't know to what extent Jordan Peterson had to morph his essence to become the public persona. So how far, we don't know how far, Jordan Peterson as private entity is far, how far this is from Jordan Peterson as we know him, as he's facing the society. How much he changes his understanding of things and presentation of things when he goes from private entity to public entity. So we are dealing essentially with the character Jordan Peterson. We also need to be sober about that. That we're not dealing with the most humble, the most private persona. And when we deal with anything to do with publicity, it is an inevitable factor that people have to reinforce, emphasize the component of themselves that is capable of withstanding social exposure. It is not the same persona as it would be in an intimate setting with a trusted people. This is also an important thing to understand. Exactly, being dogmatic deprives you of being open to challenging your beliefs and for expanding your horizons. Do you know Adrienne? No. We have to digest and really understand ideas instead of blindly accepting it. This is exactly it. And by thinking about these things, by actually breaking them down, we can gather the most complete idea and actually come perhaps far closer to any philosopher, to any thinker, than if we just briefly glanced over their statements. And another, by the way, trap of the mind is when we just briefly consume content, when we briefly consume ideas, our mind doesn't work intensively, fully the entire time. It doesn't. Our mind will find the focal point, something that is most appealing to us, something that resonates with us the most in the moment, and we'll grab that and put it in our library. Our brain won't be analyzing the statement if it's just read quickly, if it just flashed in front of you. This is actually the thing that media uses to form some shallow opinions in people, to form points of view in people. Something that you can discuss over lunch with your co-workers is designed on these principles. It must contain something that you can easily assimilate, absorb into yourself, and be able to operate with. An easy concept. It's not a sophisticated concept that has many facets to it. This is how media designs the points of view. And on the receiving end of that, it is our responsibility to treat information with some analytical rigor if we feel appeal to that. I live in North America among the elites. I grew up in a swamp having nothing. The hypocrisy of leftists is what always grabs my attention. Well, it's, again, the thing is, when we deal with systems, when we deal with systemic things, anonymized, big systems, big organizations, you can never expect any morals. Morals are the definition for an individual. You're dealing with anonymous entity. You cannot treat it as a human. You cannot treat it as anything humanized. So that's why there is hypocrisy in any big entity, because big entity is not meant to be a human. Big entity is formed from smaller entity because smaller entity was necessary to shield human from the implications of that bigger responsibility that we discussed in the beginning. Hello, nice to see you back. So we are moving on to quote number 2. Jordan Peterson today Randall lost a wrestling match to their mom. Embarrassing day. Well, it sounds very cute, to be honest. Um, Quote number 2 is when you have something to say, silence is a lie. When you have something to say, silence is a lie. I understand how this quote might be interpreted in favor to sound like truth, to sound like a good instruction for action, because I mean, these quotes, I guess, are intended to translate into the action, into the course of action. So when we read, when you have something to say, silence is a lie, if we think of it, immediate response, by the way, would be to think through the point of view of morals, that lie is bad. So we instantly look at this interesting thing. Silence is a lie. The moral framework that we live in the Western world, teaches us, makes it a default regime that lie is something bad. So when we read this statement, we already read it as when you have something to say, silence is something bad. Which makes a person who silences themselves when they have something to say a bad person. People don't want to be a bad person. They want to be a good person. Hence, they will read it as when you have something to say it, because otherwise you are a good person. So there is a little bit of this self-inflicted manipulation that our hero today kind of uses or presses on. This is what I read in this. When you have something to say, silence is a lie. Then, if people were saying things that come to their mind at all times, would it be useful? Would it be helpful? I don't think so, because discretion is as virtuous as truth. And sometimes discretion brings us to a truth of a higher level. When we recognize that some systems are not going to hear what you have to say the way you want it to be delivered. There is something that is lost in translation in some cases. When you communicate with certain people, with certain systems, so sometimes being silent in a given situation is more virtuous than speaking your truth, because your truth might be of higher order. When you understand that what you are to say will not be received as you intended to be received. And this might be a very strong wisdom if your interest is a long-term, strategic, smart way of living. This is also an important, this quote is very important to reflect on, again, for the reason that it can be read as a manipulative thing. Silence is a lie. Lie is bad. I'm a bad person if I'm silent. So catch that. Catch that on the radio. Catch that if you listen to the radio in the car. Catch that in the news. Catch that in the movies. How little manipulative things like that are thrown into your mind. So quote number 2. How do you live every day? What's your schedule like? I don't know. It's different. Depends on my priorities at the given day. We are about to move on to quote number 3. It's a long one. Should we, by the way, stick with the shorter quotes, or should I go into long ones too? What's your vibe like today? And also, by the way, guys, if you have any thoughts related to what I'm discussing, please drop them in the comments. If you disagree with things, disagree with them. Anything. Okay, so short or long, we are okay with that. Quote number 3. Another thing, by the way, Jordan Peterson uses such a language, it's such a twisted language, that longer quotes are work. So let's attempt it. And if it works well, we'll be taking longer quotes in our work. If this quote ends up being too confusing, too difficult to process in a short span of time, then we are going to go with shorter ones, okay? Kiva, thanks for feedback. So to stand up straight with your shoulders back, like this, okay? Let's enact it. To stand up straight with your shoulders back is to accept the terrible responsibility of life with eyes wide open. It means deciding to voluntarily transform the chaos of potential into the realities of habitable order. It means adopting the burden of self-conscious vulnerability and accepting the end of the unconscious paradise of childhood, where finitude and mortality are only dimly comprehended. It means willingly undertaking the sacrifices necessary to generate a productive and meaningful reality. It means acting to please God in the ancient language. How does it feel to you? To be sovereign, we have to accept our mistakes, and we have to constantly check ideas and discern. If you're responsible, most people can't tolerate the burden of choosing, and mistakes may happen. Good. So they follow an idol. So this quote that we just read points to so many things to me. First of all, it reads to me as having a deep internal conflict. And they cope for that conflict. The terrible responsibility of life. The terrible responsibility of life. This is where I feel the conflict lies. That life is so hard, life is so difficult, so barely bearable, but I will be strong. And this is something that contradicts the tantric objective. Prana, hi, nice to see you back. It contradicts the objective of Tantra to build yourself to the state and prime yourself, condition yourself to the state in which life is not a terrible responsibility, where life is not performing sacrifices, where life is not adopting the burden. But when you mature physically, you mature neurologically, you mature psychologically, and you no longer perceive those things as that heavy weight. So what I read in this quote from our hero today is that potentially he is never actually grown up. And life feels this heavy because there must have been some, what I just hypothesized from that. If you are into the lore of Jordan Peterson, let me know if my hypothesis is right. there was some terrible childhood trauma that made little Jordan Peterson suddenly get exposed to something that he was not meant to. It was this little boy who realized that he is incredibly vulnerable, who needs to do the impossible, who needs to ensure that he is safe and secure, that he needs to do some insane amount of effort to survive. And then this little boy is incredibly terrified of the adult life and has to settle for this idea that it's going to be just worse and I need to just build this callus to keep going. This is what I read from this. I don't feel harmony from this statement. I don't feel maturity from this statement, to be honest. Even though, again, it sounds like, this theme of, especially like red pillars love to do this, like be tough, tough it up, kick yourself, prime yourself, callous yourself, make yourself invincible, at an expense of experiencing life, the full spectrum of life. You cannot just tune out your senses and live a complete, grounded, balanced life. There always will be this element of avoiding the future trauma and thus closing the doors to a lot of life experiences. There's always been talk of Dr. Peterson being cross-dresser. I think it's true. So he might be oppressed from being closet homosexual. It's so cool how these quotes tie with Tantra. Yep. I don't know. I think there is some pressure of higher order, something related to the fear of the world. It's maybe that can affect that. But I think there is a complex of things. I don't think that it's something one. I don't think that it's some personality trait. I don't think that it's some specific that was at play. I think there was a whole complex of things. Rarely children are traumatized by something one. Imagine, to traumatize a child, the conditions must be comprehensive, such that their psyche is primed for trauma and unable to recover from potentially traumatic event, like it would happen in a healthy psyche scenario. So it must be the background of a child's life to be pretty unstable, pretty stimulating in a negative way. And then traumatic event happens, some powerful traumatic event happens on the background of low-grade events, and that makes the child unable to process the traumatic event. Trauma encapsulates and lives with the person and becomes the foundational feature of this person's life. I think we have to break the taboo, as people have consciously chosen to live with all of its features, and then they're usually living not just carry their self, just my opinion. Well, it's something that, of course, is worthy of debate. And I was contemplating those thoughts, especially after I read the Unbearable Lightness of Being back in the day. I loved one idea from it. And actually, one thought, I mean, it's probably not for YouTube, but so to stand up straight with your shoulders back, again, it gave me these ideas to feel what person Great Owl. Yeah, I also hope so. I mean, I want to make this stream with an intention of supporting him. I don't want it to be like a roast session. I want it to be more of like sending some blessing to him in a way that his life becomes better, he finds his ground, and he gets to some satisfying point with his wellness, of course. But this is, again, I feel, unfortunately, that a person must be tormented inside, tormented and torn apart by some deeply rooted conflict, that the reality is just like tries to squish you like a bug. the world always tries to squish you like a bug. Imagine that pressure that a person must live with if this is their foundational belief. And that also spirals probably with the choices that the person makes in life. Otherwise, removing the connotation of terrible responsibility, sacrifices, and burden, removing that connotation, the statement is actually quite reasonable. To stand up straight with your, if we make it positive, let's make the statement positive and productive. To stand up straight with your shoulders back is to not accept the terrible responsibility of life, but to take leadership over your life. Let's make it beautiful. To stand up straight with your shoulders back is to embrace your leadership in your creative stream of life, with eyes wide open, with seeing the resources that you possess, is to reach the stability, maturity, and calmness to have broad horizon and seeing the resources that you are provided. It means deciding to voluntarily transform the chaos of potential into the reality. Beautiful statement, indeed. That's exactly what I talk about in my streams. It means adopting the burden of self-conscious vulnerability and accepting the end of unconscious. It means passing through the satanic well and finding knowledge sufficient for you to embrace and learn the creatorship way without unnecessary nostalgia for the period of utter innocence. It is to pursue innocence, the state of being a novice, in more and more pursuits in life, never closing yourself to the possibilities of novelty and discovery available to you in the world and in yourself. Where finitude and mortality are only dimly comprehended. By realizing the life potential that you are given, and by prioritizing and by building awareness of Mortido, prioritize living each day of your life consciously. This is what we can say. It means willingly undertaking the sacrifices necessary to generate a productive and meaningful reality. Here, I don't know how to reword it. I would just ditch this statement. It means willingly undertaking the sacrifices necessary to generate a productive and meaningful reality. Let's reword it. I know how to reword it. It means taking an action, taking the lead to be generating productive and meaningful reality is a debatable thing. He means acting to please God. These things I would probably reframe in my coordinate system as something that aligns with your creative potential, something that aligns with your genetic predisposition, something that aligns with your talent, something that aligns with your capabilities, the best capabilities. Transform. I appreciate your way of thinking, such beautiful men, and as yourself. So, can we move on from quote number 3? I think so. It was long, but it was really interesting actually to analyze. The next one is on theme so much. I didn't understand what was said. I don't know. I was confused. So, so quote number 4. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. Again, we're dealing with a person with very deep-rooted, unresolved conflict. This statement could only come from the person under an incredible, like the formulation of that. If it was the isolated quote, it would be from a person who is living with some thorn inside, I think. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing. Again, there is this connotation, like from the previous quote that we read, of that person who got once disappointed by things in the satanic well. And now they utilize that awareness, and they kind of try to rationalize that awareness of things as opposed to moving forward. Because you're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. Inevitability, doom and gloom. Why would this be a wording of the statement? I get the idea. And again, I would reword it in a more neutral way. What I struggle with is lack of neutrality. There is a clear exhibition of some thorn that lives inside of this person, inside of the person's mind, and perhaps also through this internal pressure has physical effects as well. You are going to pay a price. I mean, yeah, everything we do comes at an exchange. We take resources from the environment, we process them, we output something. This is how nature works. Nature works in exchange. Nature works through uptake, processing, yield, destruction, transformation. Nature is cyclical. We're all pumping some resources in and out. We are transforming matter into energy, energy into matter, and this process ongoing. So paying a price is again in the realm of just facing something really traumatic. Poison. Which poison? Why worded as which poison? Why does it have to have this gloomy connotation? It's some depression maxing, in my opinion. To pay a price. It could be reframed if I was to work with Jordan Peterson. If he came to me, gave me this list of quotes, and said, this is what you need to know about me to work with me. If you were to make my life better, I would be digging into these statements and changing the perspective on these things, because price? What do you mean by this price? Are we again dealing in the space of sacrifice? When we talk about, by the way, talk about price, not exchange. Not some rotation of resources, not some rotation of matter, energy, resources. But we're talking about price, poisons, sacrifices. This is a person operating, again, under huge pressure. This is a person operating under huge load. This is a person who feels barely making it. This is why it is all perceived like that. From a free, expensive state, when there's no thorn, when the thorn is removed, things are perceived differently. Things are perceived as, okay, I want this. This means these and these steps, these and these resources, and I'm going to execute. It's neutrality. Any person dealing with large-scale businesses, ventures, are going to be analyzing things through the objectives of that action and nothing else. And they're building algorithms in accordance to the objectives of their activity. But adding some extra emotional weight is the sign that a person is misplacing things because of some aching sore spot that draws a lot of focus in the person. This is what I read in this again. I would really want to relax this man. I would really want to relax his mind. I would really want to sit with him, see if he can adopt a new breathing scheme. If this person can breathe freely. I would be really curious if he would be susceptible to that, if he could relax, if he could find a way around that. Again, assuming that this is something that comes sincerely, that this is not some prefabricated thing, because again, we're dealing with public persona. But that's the impression from the text that I'm getting. Choice of the words is really striking. Yes, well, it will get better. I think created meaning can't resist the real life challenge. We have to really find a meaning or accept that life is meaningless. We have to face it. I'm pro, if you're actively searching for meaning of life, you're not living right now in the moment. So the skill that I would prioritize is how you can live in the moment. How can you feel life in the moment? Because meaning in life, pursuit of meaning in life sometimes occupies people way too much, such that they forget to live in the moment, they forget to live. Some abstract unreachable idea becomes more valuable than the present moment, the unique moment when life is actually happening. And that's understandable because a lot of people cannot feel life happening as it's happening. They cannot perceive it. And that's why they seek meaning there and then, because right now for them is not valuable at all. They know the idea of life exists there. Tomorrow, it existed yesterday in childhood memories somewhere. But right now, they cannot feel it. It just doesn't exist. And that's the skill set that I teach in Tantra. He's depressed man. Many reasons, but I still think because he's worried about not being accepted. We need to examine when he was born. Perhaps this will explain things better. Yeah, it's very good to, not acceptable for a man born in the 50s to be gay if it was illegal. Well, yeah, it's always important to consider people in the context of historic moment. Yet, interestingly, he became popular in the recent years. I think he had a very strong surge of popularity, specifically in the recent years. Which also interesting to examine. We're not reading just the quotes. We're reading something that shaped or resonated with the minds of a lot of people. And so far, what we've read aligns really well with Red Pill, aligns very well with David Goggins' thing. And I think both of them, they were popular in the similar time frame. Stoicism, a lot of content on Stoicism became really popular. Push, 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 and so on. So right now we are kind of on the other end of that. I think when people reached exhaustion through following these philosophies, and they're looking for some alternatives. And else also, by the way, relief from this responsibility, this insane responsibility. And interestingly also, Jordan Peterson, David Goggins, Red Pill, all of these things talking about sacrifice, responsibility, push yourself. These things came at the same time as very powerful New Age movement as well, that was talking that you are responsible for the world, you are responsible for ascension, you are responsible for this planet, you are responsible for everything, you are the savior of the world. You know, there was this movement of building crystalline beings and stuff like that, people who will be transcending into 5D reality. Also, this thing with this responsibility. Your thoughts are changing the world. Your thoughts will allow everyone to ascend and so on. So this topic of responsibility was really heavily fed from many outlets. And then also environmental thing was also a part of it. Like, let's ignore the factories that dump a bunch of stuff. No, you stop using some commodities. So yeah, this like whole responsibility theme, I think people are so fatigued by that. This one is interesting. This phrase. If you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. Boom. Here we need to agree on definitions. What is a tough man? A tough man, and who is a weak man? I really need to know the context of this phrase, but this one is from 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. And actually look at this, the focus of the book title, An Antidote to Chaos. Withstanding chaos is something that he can't entertain. He wants to not have chaos. He wants to have orderly life. It's not bad to desire to have orderly life, but to put it to the title of your book and to center your book around this idea is telling as well. James Miller. To center your book around this idea is telling as well, and everything that we've read so far also ties back to that. An antidote to chaos. I don't want chaos. I can't handle it. I can't handle I can handle responsibility. I can handle this world. I'm barely tough enough to handle it to such extent that it's terrifying. And I need to keep fortifying myself against that. Instead of growing, instead of expanding in our metaphysical space in which we can handle things without them feeling like, ugh. But because of this deep tension, this thorn inside, I think this is why the world is perceived as, I need to be tough and even tougher. And no cows, please, no cows. No. Think of anyone, if you or yourself are socially anxious, for instance. Social anxiety is a good illustration, the experience of social anxiety is a good illustration of how difficult it is to endure chaos for you. What mechanisms work? What mechanism flicks in your mind to make you withstand the environment with a lot of stimulus, with a lot of chaotic stimulus. You can observe what happens to you. Can you remain relaxed? Can you relax in principle in that environment? Or are you becoming like a rock? Or are you becoming totally numb in your mind and you're just deeply in your thoughts, physically just sprinting right through this crowd? Analyze that. In terms of handling chaotic environments. Any tips on going into a public place you have high social anxiety? The great tone, I can send you the link to the stream where we did this with Jose, I think his name was. We did a practice on that. There are no tips. You need to find something in yourself. You need to find the adaptation in yourself that is going to give you this different scenario of handling it. Instead of the adaptation of I know my destination, nobody talk to me, nobody touch me, nobody. I'll just sprint. Is the stream labeled? No, it was part of it. I need to find it. If you want, either we'll comment under this one or you comment something after the stream is over and I will respond to your comment. Or we can do it through email. But one can't live in the moment when there are unresolved things in the past. Like most people can't imagine the present moment even because they feel pulled from the past. Exactly. This is the paradox of this an accomplishment. When I work with clients with trauma, first thing we do, we find accomplishment of that traumatic event. You cannot our psyche doesn't live on the same time axis as our physical self. Our psyche processes things that are unaccomplished. You will be living every day the experience, or not you, somebody will be living the experience of walking into their boyfriend cheating on them every single day. Every single day they will be experiencing their boyfriend cheating on them. Even if their boyfriend is gone, they already have a new boyfriend, and this boyfriend is sitting like a house cat every day waiting for her with dinner prepared, never having cheated once and never having an intention to, and treats her like a goddess. This element of that, if that was a traumatic event, will be living in the head every single day. Or the feeling of that, unaccomplished feeling of that, how you felt in that moment, shaped something inside of you. Some adaptation was built at that moment to not get hurt too much, to not die. That adaptation shaped, and now every single day this adaptation lives with you. Because it was not until you carry this baggage. Indeed, this is a very good remark here. Thank you, Great Tone. We are moving on. We are moving on to, and if you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. Yes, Kiva, they are storing that and they're experiencing them, and they're experiencing the adaptations to those feelings. The trauma exists only until it's no longer needed. Traumatic response, traumatic adaptation. Like, for example, you have a rug burn. Your skin crusts on top. Are you going to have crust the entire time? No. But you're going to have crust while the skin is healing, while the crust is needed. Your skin healed underneath, the crust falls off. What happens if you start, for example, prematurely removing this crust, which is the equivalent of, for example, a child is living in a very hectic environment without any baseline security. And then some, relative, some family friend comes and assaults them. And they go back to that hectic environment. This environment will be equivalent of scratching this protective crust all the time. And this wound will never heal. There will be no conditions for the wound to heal. The wound will be getting inflamed, getting worse. I mean, it's probably not an equivalent analogy, but you got the gist. The crust exists only while it's needed, only while the underlying healing is happening. But I don't know if training to stay in the moment and come back to it constantly resolving the past. It's a complex work. It's a whole process. It's a whole sequence of things that happen to get a person out of that. We can discuss that at some point. It's a good topic to discuss. Trauma recovery. I think we touched up on that in some streams here and there. It was a pretty big part of some of them, but we never had dedicated stream, I don't think. But we'll work on that. It's also some things that are used there require probably more profound exposure to tantric methods, because I will be referring to lots of practices there, and if you never did the practices, it will be really difficult to stay on track with that. Thank you so much. Kiva, thanks. Thank you for confirming that. If you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. Weak and tough. What comes to your mind first when you think of tough men? Also, I don't know if he refers to men as like gender or if men as humans. So there is instant stereotype of perception, I think, that will be induced in the minds of people when they read this statement. Tough men, weak men. What comes to your mind when you think of that? Those buzzwords. I'll try to induce one, and I'll try to induce this couple in my mind, just out of the most stereotypical thing. He is saying weak men are more dangerous because they are unfulfilled. A tough man. Are tough men fulfilled? What fulfills tough men compared to a weak man? Is in general tough and weak. Again, like in the first quote, when we were talking about your capacity for good, your capacity for evil, I think we're dealing with the same false or perceived dichotomy of tough and weak, tough men and weak men, because human is quite sophisticated. And moreover, if a person is alive and functions right now, then they are clearly adapted to life. If a person functions in life, they are adapted to life. Hence, they found the exact skill set that carries them through life. What is weak about this person? Even if this person exhibits some signs of what we now, in this current social context, will read as weak men. About tough men. What do we define there? This quote is really difficult to analyze for its face value because I am completely lost in the adjectives here, in the descriptors. A psychopath can be a very strong psychopath and very weak empath. For instance, could be incredibly skilled, could be incredibly powerful at their psychopathy, can be incredibly coward to face anything to do with emotions. So this quote, I would just not consider it. I mean, I understand again, if we talk about some specific stereotype that Jordan Peterson wants to elucidate here, I get this statement. But what is that weakness? If weakness is indeed, like you mentioned, I suppose pushing through difficulty toughens you, and avoiding difficulty can leave you weak or useless even. Nobody needs a useless man. The useless, so man is a tool. You're thinking as an employer. You're talking about as resource acquisition. That's where this lingo is applicable. Also, humans are adaptable. Humans can be pushed to the conditions where they will be developing certain traits. I don't know. Tough, forgiving for others, hard on himself, high accountability. Weak, hard on others, soft on himself, low accountability. Okay, GCA, thank you so much for elaborating that as well. Thank you for kind words, everyone. Great responsibility in being number one. Oh. You brought up weak men are more dangerous because they're unfulfilled. This unfulfilled element, I can induce in my mind, yes, as well, a person with a lot of insecurity. For to my mind, what comes is insecurity, weakness. To me, weakness comes as insecurity. And a very specific person comes to me as well. The person that comes to my mind, I met back in the undergrad. It was the person who lived by some laws, was easily upset, was strong intellectually, was strong academically, was able to push through academic load very well, was welcome in some social settings very much, was almost one of the popular guys. But in his presence, you feel that there is something about him that makes him perceived as very frail, as very psychologically frail. And even it translated into his physical appearance of being by his side. And this is the only person that came to my mind that I would perceive as weak. And he was voicing so many laws through very upset and entitled lens. It was really, such a peculiar attitude. That to me, when this unfulfilledness, that's what comes to my mind. And indeed, this person felt dangerous. Other people, they had weaknesses, they had toughnesses, but they were on a much more sophisticated spectrum. So I could not perceive them the same as that person that I just described. I mean, aren't humans resources? I mean, that's what gives life meaning for me, at least. Well, we can go in depth on this topic, but yes, I've often felt like my worth as a man is almost predominantly measured by what I can do for somebody. A tool, lol. I mean, these concepts, they are, in my opinion, okay to have if at the same time you don't dismiss your individual experience of life. Because life is how you experience it. So those concepts, they may be useful tool if you at the same time experience life, if you find your fulfillment, if you find your fulfilling developmental expansive path, and you can sense life, you can experience life. If that is not in contradiction, if you aren't just leaving your physical and emotional and sensual and everything else self, and forgo that for the sake of fulfilling some concept, some abstraction, if you're not doing that, if you're capable of being in yourself and experiencing life yourself, then it's okay. But if the opposite happens, then it is a path of, I think, inevitable facing of crisis eventually in life. Middle-age crisis or something. Like something stereotypical like that would be probably middle-age crisis. When suddenly it like hits that, oh my God, I never lived my life the way I wanted. I've never done things that I wanted. I've always been a tool. I've always been trying to satisfy my parents, then my spouse, then my children, my employer, and my dreams are all gone. Everything I wanted to do was gone. I've never felt anything for the past 20 years, and all of those 20 years are gone. And the only things that validate those 20 years is something that I see outside of me that I even don't have contact with. Because when you are not embodied, when you are a tool only, you are not building relationships with a human. You cannot. You are going to be some physical or biochemical machine, a tool. You cannot build intimate relationships with your partner. You cannot build meaningful relationships with your kids. You're going to build an MLM of being a tool, basically. You're going to do this multi-level marketing of that, guys, this is what life is about. I was working to give birth to you. Now you will study at the university to work to give birth to your kids, such that they also go to university, work to give birth to their kids, and we will all ignore the whole flow of life altogether. So this is the typical MLM that's being propagated among people. And if that is the foundation of life, life itself is lost. The context of life is lost. Intimacy is lost. Relationships with anyone and yourself and the world is lost. It's all gone. It's important to be able to distinguish where you are fulfilling some tasks and where you are living, and having a huge domain where you live, and start inviting people, not from the context of you, the tool, for some systemic fulfillment of needs, but you, as if you wish to use terminology of tools, you are the tool for love, you are the tool for pleasure, you are the tool for warmth, you are the tool for intimacy, you are the tool for experiencing life. This is what we do all of those things for, essentially. We work to experience things. We acquire resources and some surplus of resources to experience things. Peterson lacks nuance on this. The man who is on trial for I think the statement is wrong. Hitler, dangerous man, not weak. Yeah, if we go through examples, yeah, definitely those people, we don't register them as this is a weak man. Unless we opt for some philosophy that indirectly will portray them as weak. Because pursuit of power means that you're weak. If you want power means that you don't possess power. So the tendency to seek power means that you don't feel empowered yourself. So those people may be interpreted as weak as well, in some philosophical, systemic way, artificial, synthetic way. But as we perceive them as their charisma, yeah, they are not weak. Maybe not the people that you would deal with necessarily, because you don't perceive them as reliable. You're not trained to be dealing with such people. But I mean, my wife and children, they can find their meaning and purpose themselves. It's their call. But for me, at least, it's being a resource, really. My definition of resource is making a net positive impact on plurality of people constantly, as much as in my power. Average joy. Hi, you made it. So claiming my XP makes me weak? Joking. It's a long journey. It's to question every aspect of yourself and tolerate the fear and attacks of ego and build life from scratch where every step is examined or choose. I guess we have some continuation to this message. And I'm going to prep for the next quote. The next quote is actually pretty good. Pretty good. You can only find out what you actually believe rather than what you think you believe by watching how you act. You simply don't know what you believe before that. You are too complex to understand yourself. I assume he was being a bit hyperbolic, but I think he suggests men are being monsters, right? Well, you tell me. Now we are free to interpretations. Nice to please give your opinion. My opinion, please. GCA, you sound pretty confident in your statement. I didn't know that you were requesting feedback from me. If that's something that is in full harmony with you, why do you need my opinion? Ask me a question about it, if you have a question, and then we can discuss. So you can only find what you actually believe rather than what you think you believe by watching how you act. So you simply don't know what you believe before that. You are too complex to understand yourself. I don't understand this statement of you are too complex to understand yourself here. It would be interesting to think through that. But I agree with that indeed what you create in your life, the actions that you take, are in full alignment with not even your belief. I would use different wording here. So semantics is... I would be picky here. It's not a belief. It is rather, well, maybe he uses belief to summarize all of the functions of your mind and body. Essence. Yes, excellent word. Essence. You can only find out what your essence is by watching how you act. And this is a good quote, yes. A great example will be the inverse narcissism. Because this will be the people who believe that they are the greatest thing on the planet, who are worthy of so much, who deserve so much, who wants so much love from the world, who wants so much acceptance from the world, who wants so much exposure from the world, but will never step forward for that, will never validate themselves for that. So they don't believe that, essentially, they don't feel on the one hand, it's a split personality. They on the one hand feel like they are worthy of so many things. They think that they're worthy of so many things, but they feel like they're not worthy of anything. So they think and they feel. So what they feel is that they're not worthy of so many things. And the world reciprocates that because what they feel translates into their actions. What they think does not translate into actions because the feeling is the opposite. So there is this internal conflict between what I think of myself and what I feel of myself. What I feel of myself is what's ingrained in my body. what my physical reaction, i.e. chemical reactions inside of my systems, muscular reactions that follow in response to some events are. These are the feelings. I can think anything I want. This guy is a great match for me. He's from an excellent family. He is very wealthy. He is very educated. My feeling is he is absolutely disgusting. My body shrinks in his presence. I have headache in his presence. I feel smaller in his presence. I want to mute myself in his presence. After him, I need to recover for several days. I think he is great. I feel he is not great. So how am I acting? I am probably going to try find some contact with him because I think he is a great guy. But what I feel will eventually create the behavior that will be repelling this situation. Depending on how much you are connected with what you feel, you can go further along, or you can abort the mission early on. But what you feel will transform your reality, i.e. your body, i.e. your actions, far stronger than what you think. This is, I think, what we deal with. But you're too complex to understand yourself is an interesting statement. Okay, GC, I mean this has worked for me pretty well, so I stick to it. But I would love for you to dissect my thoughts like I'm pretty open. Like I may not exactly like it, but hey, if it works, it works. I need to know more about that because I need to know more what tools, what functions you would list for yourself. If you want to formulate in an email, let's do that because right now it's probably will be too limiting to just try to brainstorm it in the chat format. It's very strange. We want to see life with a biased mind and ego that just wants to survive. Like the very mind we want to analyze with is already biased. It is. This is interesting. Taking a break from the story you've told yourself and really studying your past actions and what they say about your actual perspective and worldview. Yes, it's a really good thing to perform. At some point in life, I was analyzing what has been happening in my life. Both some like external circumstances and what I've done. I noticed that everything followed pretty logical pattern. Like every single event followed very logical pattern. Like in Ariana Grande's song that you all probably heard. I want it, I got it. I want it, I got it. And there are priorities sometimes that you may not be necessarily aware of, but when you satisfy them, they kind of resonate. You want security, here's your security. You want at an expense of, let's say, expansion, at an expense of risk-taking, at an expense of opportunity-taking, at an expense of exposing yourself to something. Or you want to pivot in your job, you're scared, the circumstances will kick you out of that job. You will create the events that will be in more authentic alignment with you. It will look like some external force perhaps pushed you away from that, but you will be aligning your life to your personality. You will be aligning your life in accordance to some deeply rooted things. And rooted sometimes in survival, rooted sometimes in something that was not fulfilled back in the day. Some fundamental cravings. Revisiting that is so vital. It's right now that I have a toolbox for that. I do this work regularly, but sometimes I also need to face other people. Like I go to learn different skills. I go to different specialists who suddenly expose to myself that no, you are not outputting things the way you think you are. I go to vocal lessons. I practice Tantra. I practice all of those things. I practice work with my body. Yes, I feel like there is something missing. Something is not felt right. And then I go to vocal lessons. Vocal teacher shows to me where there was a block, where I was not connected with some depth of mine, where I was dismissing a portion of myself, where I was hiding certain power of myself. I go and I get exposed to that. Would I be exposed to this otherwise if I was not pursuing this new experience, if I was not pursuing this external point of view? I don't know, maybe not. That's why relationships are so important. That's why we have live stream recording on my channel. How to use people. You go, you connect with people. People through conflict, through something that you don't like, through something that you absolutely love, through something that becomes your comfort zone, through something that becomes irritation, through cycles, observing cycles. These things are insanely valuable because people can show you so much. Social encounters are the best thing for you to work on these patterns. Instead of thinking, idiots, foo, disgusting people, never talking to them again, foo. Think, why am I susceptible to that? Why do I consider this behavior as bad? Why am I always in this situation? Why am I affected by this so strongly? Why am I always magnetized by these stories? And then you pay attention to yourself that, oh my God, I actually feel. Also, another good tool is analyze your algorithms on the phone. Social media algorithms. See what is your algorithm like. This is an excellent portrait of yours. This is what you actually believe in the notion of Jordan Peterson, or you feel in my notion. And sometimes feelings are in conflict. There's conflict inside. Sometimes your desires won't come true because they are in conflict with something. You want one thing, but then there is some parasitic, like authentically, say you authentically want something, but then there is some thought, some concept, something that you expose yourself to all the time that devalues this thing or makes it impossible. Why do you use this thing? Why does this conflict exist? Is there a detour? Who are you using as the weight, as the container of this conflict? What is happening? Analyze that. It's so cool. Sometimes you even can take a piece of paper. I like to work on the whiteboard. You take a piece of paper, and if some prominent issue arises, let's say, this bitch always talks to me about these things. I'm so done with that. I've always left frustrated for 5 days afterwards, and I think about these things and I feel self-doubt and I start procrastinating and I stop doing my thing that I really love. And this thing affects me and I'm now sad and I never want to talk to this bitch again, but then 2 weeks later I find myself talking to this bitch again and the cycle repeats. Draw this on the whiteboard, draw this on the piece of paper, and analyze that. What is happening there? Pick this situation apart, pull it apart. Wonderful tool. In the echo chamber, some people, they try to grow alone. They go into this hermit lifestyle when they are fully isolated. Thank you, guys. When they're fully isolated and they try to work on themselves. Okay, if you have all previous experiences and you're working on all of your previous experiences and on your present experience, including your desire to be in solitude, wonderful. But, boy, so much, thank you, Kyushka, you can learn so much from being with people, from exposing yourself to situations. This is one of the shortcuts to this tip, to this tool by Jordan Peterson. Oh, oh my God. Whew. This quote, I will leave it to you guys to interpret, okay? I will leave it to you to interpret because, again, I'm lost. The quote: if you don't say what you think, then you kill your unborn self. I guess how I would look at that again is that with everything that we discussed before, self expression might be a culprit there. Need to oppress and hence this hyper value of self expression. Because when there was, for example, deprivation of self expression, indeed there could be a hyper value of that later in life. Like, I want to claim it. I want to claim my self expression. I want to claim my expression of my thoughts. This is already the second quote here on that theme. Say or not to say. And we cannot read this as an instruction to always say what's on your mind. I don't think it's reasonable in life. And then these like very strong statements like it's a lie. Again, in the context of modern morals, lying is bad. So you're a bad person if you don't say. Here you kill your unborn self. This is also pretty like bloody sounding thing that also pushes the buttons. I believe there is power in speech. Can be a dangerous thing also though, not always good. Dwayne, I don't know if you were there for that first quote that we discussed, but it also can be, it's not always that your words will land properly. I mean, say it to yourself if you want. Your truth is not always truth for everybody else, not in the sense that you're wrong, and not in the sense that you have disagreement, but in the sense that what you say might not be understood properly even. There is so much lost in translation based on people's biases that we were just talking about. Based on the biases, based on the understanding of things. These things create this translation bridge. And this translation bridge can really skew what you're about to say, devalue it completely. So discretion, the freedom of speech, I think, the internal freedom of speech, we should multiply it by the discretion factor, by the discretion coefficient. Also, not all information is conveyed by words. Our words are not always necessary. Sometimes we have to say things that we wouldn't say to ourselves in the same situation as the person is in. We need to utilize some artistry to say what they would receive if we want to really help them, if we want to really communicate something to them. Sometimes words are not necessary even. Sometimes a smile will convey far more. Something on the biological level will find far more feedback, will light far more light than a word. So this is where I would add finesse to his desire for this speech. But then at the same time, from the analytical standpoint, to me, those points to this thing of I want to express, I want to speak, I want to have freedom, I want to have freedom of expression. Where's my freedom of expression? Which perhaps the Great Tone was bringing up those points. It's all speculations, but for whatever oppression he underwent and still perhaps undergoes, might be a facet in the predicament of this strong feeling the necessity of that, feeling the necessity to earn that, grab that, utilize that. Thank you, Kiva. Then the next quote. Oh my God. Let's do it. If you cannot understand why someone is doing something, look at the consequences of their actions, whatever they might be, and then infer the motivations from their consequences. For example, if someone is making everyone around them miserable and you'd like to know why, their motive may simply be to make everyone around them miserable, including themselves. And here it's very good that we covered the you can only find out what you actually believe by watching how you act quote. This one is a very good predecessor to this quote about motivation and consequences. Because some people, they will have very deep-rooted motive to make people miserable, for instance, including themselves. Because of some, either because they have adaptation to only behave this way, to only harvest resources from communication this way, to only understand and can like get love or can get some resources this way. I think it goes step deeper because the motivation to make everyone around them miserable may come from internal thorn that necessitates this misery cycle, misery game, to harvest something of value. So this is where I would just take a step deeper there and multiply this quote by the quote about belief and actions. I'm done with this one actually. Ты пришел, любовь моя. Ты мой сладенький, мой хорошенький, мой пузончик, пузончик, пузончик. So, we're moving on to the next quote. Ты мой сладенький, пришел мой любименький. У тебя там колючка застряла. Вот, видишь, нашли колючку. Все, мама выкинула ее нафиг. Она, по-моему, на тебя опять упала. Вот, колючка. Итак, another quote. If you fulfill your obligations every day, you don't need to worry about the future. Well, this is a good quote. Perhaps I would reword it a little bit because your obligations, again, this obligation, sacrifice, pressure, duty. Obligations are I mean, it's a good summary word, I guess. It drives the message home. So if you fulfill your obligations every day, you don't need to worry about the future. The magic of this thing, actually, when you are living your life, how would reward? If you live your life every day, you don't need to worry about the future. Because when you live your life every day, when you are fully aligned, when you are as aligned with your authentic self, with what you want to be doing, with what you are best skilled at, with what you have most energy flowing to, when you are tending to always come to closer and closer to this alignment. If something throws you off alignment, you prioritize going back to your alignment and you experience your life. You're prioritizing your life. You're prioritizing your doing every single day. Then future doesn't exist as a desirable entity. Because you are on your path. You are on the path. You don't need to reach the path. You are on the path. You are in the river of life that carries you smoothly through. And you are flowing along. You are not resisting the flow of life. You are not holding on to something such that flow of life doesn't carry you away. You are going with the flow of life, in resonance with the flow of life. And this is when these worries about meanings, futures, they dissipate. Here, however, you don't need to worry about the future. There are things that are, of course, unexpected. We don't live in the vacuum. This quote can be refined, I think, because there is a background worry about the future. That is anxiety, which anxiety needs its domain to exist. If you don't have domain for anxiety, then anxiety won't exist. And anxiety doesn't exist when you live as aligned with yourself as possible. But this, we're talking about things that you can control. In life, there are spontaneous events that you can't control. And this will be generating not necessarily the 24/7 background anxiety, but it will be generating some occasional anxiety. So while it is a very appealing idea to control your life, to build your calluses, to work hard and ensure that you got everything under your control, there must be a capacity to withstand the spontaneity as well. There are things like black swans that happen in the economy, in the political life, in social life. Just some things in general in your private life can happen that will be unexpected, that will not belong to the spectrum of things that you can control or could have predicted. There is a domain in which you will be worrying about the future. There will be times that will make you worry about the future. Because not always you will face, for example, new economic leap, and your obligations, let's say, if we take this statement very directly, you knew your obligations were to work for a factory that makes let's say, some toothpaste like we know it now. And then some groundbreaking technology comes into place and the toothpaste is replaced with some revolutionary product. What you've been devoting your life to, your education, your 20 years of career will become obsolete. So you are going to face what am I going to do next? I know how to work at the factory making toothpaste. I don't know how to find myself in the new realm right now. It will take time for you to figure things out, worrying about the future. Because you are simply not aware of what to do. And those moments can be grand, those moments can be small, but they will be happening. So how to worry about the future without it damaging you? This is also pointing to the same exact thing that we started with from the first quotes, of that something exhibited to Jordan Peterson, that the world is a freaking grind. Super difficult, exhausting mission to be on. And this is the same motive. How to do to not worry about the future. I don't want callous. I don't want to worry about you. I want an antidote to callous. I don't want to worry about the future. I will find the formula. I will secure everything. In the world where callous is a part of it, where spontaneity is a part of it, i.e. worrying about the future. So there is some balance. There is some balance. And there is skill set that exists and that is useful for being able to handle the worry about the future, occasional worry about the future, occasional chaotic environment. It's the same dilemma, training to be in the present or solving the past traumas that project into the future. What do you think? It's not a dilemma. They come in as a complex. training to be in the present or solving the past traumas. You work on one. Solving a trauma is singular event. Being in the present is a lifelong thing. Thank you, Kilushka. And hello, Shuriken. So they're not mutually exclusive. It's not a dilemma, in my opinion. You are, on the one hand, you are learning to live more in the present moment while you're working on taking this trauma, extracting a lesson, some law from it, taking something useful and removing something not useful. You're simultaneously working on that. I don't perceive it as dilemma. Oh my god, this one is interesting too. Also completes the portrait of our today's hero. It took untold generations to get you where you are. A little gratitude might be in order. If you're going to insist on bending the world to your way, you better have your reasons. It sounds like his parents talked to him about that. Or it sounds like an expression that the expression that was generated from the impressions from his upbringing as well. Like, you know how sometimes parents say something like, "You're no one in my house. You will want things when you start making your own money. You will have a say when you live on your own. When you live on your own, you're going to do whatever you want. While you are in my house, you're going to do as I say." So it is a highly imbalanced thing in which a child is completely devoid of any individuality. It's a little bit radical upbringing method in which a child is suppressed. The child can be disciplined and into respecting the boundaries inside of the house, let's say, of a parental house. And within that domain, there are some freedoms that the child can exercise. But this domain is well controlled, well defined, it's secure inside of it. There are upbringing modes in which this domain doesn't exist. So there is no space for the child's individuality. And child is taught to be completely submitted to the will of the authority. The authority oftentimes, in that sense, be why parents cannot handle the child's freedoms, because parents themselves are lacking institutions, internal institutions, to handle any spontaneity. And this attitude is conveyed to a child, thrown as responsibility on the shoulders of a child. You are responsible for peace in my house. You are responsible for making me comfortable. You are responsible for keeping my peace. This is exactly the weight on the shoulders of this little Jordan Peterson, as I see it from this quote now, that he ideally would shrug off. Because a child, to grow into a harmonious, healthy personality, must have some domain in which they test their boundaries, in which they understand their personality, in which they learn to healthily interact with the outer world, not to be squished by the outer world, then causing some hypercompensatory behaviors. When they're allowed to talk, when they are allowed to find their voice, when they are allowed to determine some system of values of theirs, when they are allowed to find how to communicate with the environment without the shields or hypercompensation combined with some shame, feeling of being little, unstable self-esteem. And this thing, if you're going to insist on bending the world to your way, you better have your reasons. This sounds like his father or mother told him so. Or environment communicated that to him. Like, you are no one here in my house. Thank you, Wayne, so much. You are no one here in my house. When you grow up, do whatever you wish. You are ungrateful, disgraceful piece of shit. You are no one. This is what I hear from this phrase. Thank you so much, 66. Thank you, guys. And this is the explanation that he gives. And this is the rule that he created for himself now. That's something that he brought into the world as the possible guarantee of peace for himself. Because again, apparently some adult figures could not secure peace for him. Some significant adult figures could not create a peaceful, stable domain for a growing child Jordan. It's a little bit crazy to witness that. To me, these quotes already formulate a very strong portrait. And all of these are hypotheses right now. I would be really curious to read his biography, because these phrases, these accent points, they don't come from nowhere. And also another thing, look at this hyperbole here. If you're going to insist on bending the world to your way, you better have your reasons, little bastard. It's really like, it's demeaning. It's addressed to a child. It's addressed to a teenager. It's addressed to a little child even before the puberty. And that, how a child perceives their home as the world, that especially abusive home is perceived as such. For them, it's the world. And this world is behaving, oh my God, it's such a juicy one, oh my God. You better have your reasons. And reasons, by the way, those reasons are not fulfillable. You better have your reasons. Imagine that father who says that. If you're going to insist on bending the world to your way, you better have your reasons, little bastard. This father saying that. Which reasons can you bring up? This father is not there to listen to your reasons. This father figure, this imaginary authority, is not there to listen to your reasons. Nobody gives a crap about your reasons in this phrase. No one. No one. It is just for you to think about that. It's for you to, I don't know, it's just to skew your perception of things. Nobody cares about your reasons in that sense. You will never come up with them. With reasons that will be heard, the reasons that will be fulfilling for that entity that you envision when you think about that. And also to bring untold generations to get you where you are. So many generations before you brought you where you are. A little gratitude might be in order. Well, this is literally this father scolding a child. They can't get rid of this feeling. What is the goal of this statement? I mean, I also understand that, but understand where he's heading, because it can be interpreted. I can interpret it as that changing the world is in general is world is a naive idea. But here it is a very belittling statement. I don't know. A scolding father figure, as if he needs to internalize it to rationalize it for himself. And then the world, why focus on the world? Why focus on something that you cannot fathom? The concept of the world with all of its birdies, bugs, humans, societies, communities, families, entities, economy, politics, natural resources, natural spontaneity. The world is an insanely huge, unfathomable entity that's abstract. It's a very huge abstraction in our mind. Bending the world to your way. I don't know, it's a very childish statement. It's complicated. Like healing the past takes years, like a never-ending story. Maybe at a point one can let go of past and future and live in the present moment to be free. Well, the Deadeye. The thing is, healing the past takes not years, it takes tools that work. Let's frame it this way, because there could be, you can spend years in, for example, psychoanalyst chair. Some people go for 15 years to dissect everything into little tiny detail, understand it fully, and they're like digging and digging and digging in this situation. It can be 20 years, never coming to any resolution, and 20 years you live with it. There could be methods like some good cognitive behavioral therapy. You go to it, in a year, you are free from that. You can go into some other methods like Tantra methods. You can find that Tantra works for you well, so you can find within several months you are building a new behavioral pattern. And you leave that thing behind. It no longer influences you because you've built a new pathway. You've built a new function. You build new biochemistry. So you don't need this adaptation anymore. Some people will go to, let's say, why is it so? Basically, the therapy, MDR therapy, where you are emulating REM sleep. And within that, you are rewiring your experiences and responses. That's an express method. So just a few sessions sometimes give wonderful results, even in people with PTSD. There are, but this is to work with trauma only. This is to work with traumatic response, with phobias. Very quick method. The more we work with wholesome picture, the faster the method will be. If we journey only in the abstractions of those events, we're going to spend, there's actually no destination sometimes in that process. If we set a goal and we work in a more methodical way, let's say through behavioral therapy, then we're going to spend less time working on this thing. When we introduce body, when we remove the psychological barriers, when we remove the factor of what's lost in translation, we go to Tantra to work on this trauma. We're going to work even faster. And if we also employ the methods such as the MDR therapy, for instance, working with the brain function at the same time, this will be a very fast thing, especially coupled with behavioral therapy, let's say, or some other ways to build new pathway to that. Because working with trauma, the past events, what we need to do, we need to take past adaptation that no longer works and put a new adaptation that works. Works for what? For what we want in life. Feels good. This is how it works. There's no need to get yourself trapped that it takes years, many years. It doesn't. With proper tools, with proper goal setting, it doesn't have to take you millions of years. Yes, you can go through like leaps. For instance, you do one big progression in this recovery. You have some plateau. Thank you, Kilushka. Then you go on another leap, another plateau. Each time your life increases in quality, like 10x. Then you may go on another leap, because traumatic things, the longer you live with them, the more they exercise the consequences. The more you exercise things that follow that trauma, the more you reinforce those experiences, the more you reinforce them physically as well. Your entire biochemistry and your muscles, your organs, internal organs, everything lives that trauma. This is why the more systems, the more holistic approach you take, the faster and more efficient it will be. And it's a dangerous belief that it takes many years, because it can even further, by the way, elongate your path of recovery. Because you will have this belief that it's going to be long and hard, hence you will not be taking advantage of all the tools that you have at your disposal. Because you want to fulfill this script that it takes a long time. It doesn't have to. It takes a long time to exercise new behavior, longer time. To understand something, to research the method, to get yourself exposed to new experience takes just a couple of sessions with a goal-oriented therapist. A few targeted sessions with a goal-oriented therapist after you have outlined what you're working on and what you want. Where you are, accountably working on that. And then also when you know the tools to go through resistances, because psyche doesn't, where extra time can be spent. Psyche doesn't, in our body, they live in homeostasis. Novelty is stress as well. New behavior can be associated with another kind of stress. You need to know tools, how to go over that bridge without much pushback. And again, good therapist will give you tools. Tantra therapist will give you tools to carry you over that resistance bridge such that you can withstand that and not go back and hide in what's known. But forget that it must take many, many years. Yes, it may, your entire life can be your path of self-improvement, self-discovery. Your entire life can be such. You will always be, moreover, you will always be influenced by environment to go slightly out of your alignment or pursue novelty or learn something new, employ new skills. But if there is some strong dysfunction, let's show it as a misalignment. This is a relatively fast process. And then you can go as this flexible system with firm knowledge and the skill of achieving equilibrium. Ooh, next quote. Oh my God. Oh, Kiva, thank you. I'm glad. I am, by the way, this is going to be the last quote. And I'm going to sign off. And we'll continue maybe tomorrow with this topic. Cool. So let's go through the last quote. And I'm going to sign off. And you guys write comments, write me emails if you have any questions, if something inspired you, if you want to discuss something. And I will try to show up tomorrow night. Because we have a huge list. Huge list. Yes, Kiva, last quote. With my favorite buzzwords. 66, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for enjoying this too. So, the quote, the last quote of the night. The purpose of life, as far as I can tell, I love this one. Thank you, Kiushka. Is to find a mode of being that's so meaningful that the fact that life is suffering is no longer relevant. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. And again, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments after the stream is over. And GCA too, by the way. The purpose of life, as far as I can tell, is to find the mode of being that's so meaningful that the fact that life is suffering is no longer relevant. So, here we have several things. First, he says that the fact that life is suffering, it's the fact. This is quite unfortunate that this is the fact. I think we discussed it, by the way, with Shuriken and Brodsky Diggs last time, right? Life is suffering. Thank you, DCA. Thank you, Kivushka. Life, basically, he equates life to suffering. That's equation. It's not life equals joy, suffering, sadness, pleasure, experiences, novelty, and whatever. It's just suffering. So, and then to find the mode of being that's so meaningful that this fact is no longer relevant. This one can be treated in two different ways. Because there could be a cohort of people who will be thinking that they need to escape the suffering into pursuit of meaning. And society offers a lot of things for people to escape. There's a rat race. Chase the money, chase the career, chase some social points, chase some social achievements, chase. Life can be artificially made meaningful for that. People can be fed some ideologies, religious beliefs that make them pursue certain things and perceive them as meaningful. Suffering can be even perceived as meaningful. The fact that life is suffering, when can the fact that life is suffering be relevant? When can it be relevant? When life is suffering, when a person literally suffers through life. And what are other scenarios in which the fact that life is suffering is relevant? When would you actively be thinking about it? When you need to explain something to yourself. You generate this fact. This is the fact. And then you need to do something to avoid it. You have what options do you have when you realize that life is suffering? What options do you have? You can recognize that suffering is how nature communicates that you're doing something wrong, and thus you will devote your time to find the method of not experience suffering, to live better, to not experience it. So you start respecting the function, basically. You find the path of respect of function. For instance, you understand what you need to live functional, good life. And you start working towards that because you don't settle for suffering. Jordan Peterson offers us an option to settle for suffering because he names it as a fact. Life is suffering. It's a given. So what he proposes is that we keep it as a given, but we constantly distract ourselves with whatever to not notice that. Or to enter the mode of total selflessness, which can also be so many entities can prey on you by like inflicting this selflessness onto yourself, this idea of selflessness, to take advantage of you. It's also a pretty dangerous thing. Or we can see it even in a more tantric way, with both. We, on the one hand, perform respective function. We learn to We learn ourselves, we learn about our needs, we learn what we need to be doing to be operating in our genetic maximum, and to also enjoy life, to develop and grow our sensory awareness, our sensory skill, to sense life. Still, me no, suffering is not caused by desire. Suffering is caused by violating the laws of nature, in my opinion. And also by a religious belief of suffering, that it's glorified, that it's something good, that something given, that it's equated to life. So in Tantra, we can, on the one hand, respect of function, we can build a body that's not inclined to suffer, but inclined to experience life fully, including joy, pleasure, which are the communication tools of nature to tell us that we're doing things right, and to read suffering as nature communicating to us that something is not right, and then build adaptations that will help us to bring us back to equilibrium. And then also with this, how we can turn this statement into tantric recipe, we can also be working on the dominance that we take the beliefs that are dysfunctional and we're building new dominant that is more aligned with our balanced point. So that's how I would read it. Thank you guys for sharing duty. Thank you so much. I think the only way to heal suffering is to stop running and facing it. Yes, you understand what caused it. Thanks so much, Kioska. You understand what caused it. You perform the respective function. You build a new skill. You build a new behavior by using your cognitive powers. And the important thing here is to not treat suffering as the currency to win joy, to win resources. No, suffering is just its own thing to work with as the language of communication. I mean, still, pleasure and pain just serve as heuristics, not accurate markers of what we need to be doing. I don't know. I disagree with that. Thank you, Dwayne. So, oh my God, we are up to, oh my God, next time we're going to cover such gems. Or maybe, well, I don't know, if we'll, it would probably be, I don't know, maybe we'll change it, we'll change our persona that we're analyzing next time. Because I think with these quotes, I don't think that we will harvest any novelty necessarily. Maybe there are some quotes that are actually recipes for life, which are interesting to analyze. So maybe tomorrow we'll get together to continue. We're still on page 1, by the way. So, okay, guys, thank you so much for today's stream. It was really wonderful. Thank you. And everyone, drop something in the comments. I know somebody wanted to leave some message. If you want, email me and ask your questions or comments. And I'm going to leave here. Thank you very much. And thank you, Kivushka. Thank you, DCA, for flowers. Thank you so much for Vavens today and for interesting arguments and questions. And I look forward to talking to you next time. Good night and thank you.